The text I have chosen for this last sermon that I will preach before you comes from Philippians, the 4th chapter. Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Let my first words today be ones of thankfulness. I thank you for asking me to be your supply minister for the past 3 months, while your pastor has been on sabbatical leave. You have been warmly welcoming to me, and I appreciate it. I hope my sermons haven't been too long. My second Sunday here, when I baptized my wife's and my 10th grandchild, my 14-year-old grandson was here, and he hasn't heard me preach very often because he lives in Frederick. And he said to his father afterwards, "That was the shortest sermon I ever heard." And I said, "Well, Billy, do you want me to preach longer?" "Oh, no, Grandpa. No. And I want to especially thank Carol and Rob of the church staff, as well as the lay leaders who have been unfailingly helpful and supportive of me. I've enjoyed getting to know you, and most days the east side of Baltimore, but I didn't get lost. 33 years ago, one of my ministers in the ministry died suddenly of a heart attack. He had not yet reached his 60th birthday. He literally burned himself day and night in ministry and in writing books. He would often write books until 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, after he died, this large church he served in Charlotte, North Carolina, published a small booklet in which there were members of the church gave their remembrances of him, and then the woman who edited the book included some of Dr. Marney's pithy comments from some of his sermons over the years. But what struck me most was the dedication on the first page of this book. It said, "To those who loved him and to some who didn't." Well, I think that's always a pastor's lot, as it is of any leader. And I accept that, and therefore I'm immensely grateful to those many who have accepted me here and the other places I have tried to serve the Lord. But I also understand, as all of you do, that no one can please all the people all the time, as Abraham Lincoln once said. In my 45 years of ordained ministry, I have learned that one steps off into the future by appreciating and understanding the past as well as the current situation. I'm convinced that institutions like the church often are willing to change by appeals to their histories as well as their current strengths. For example, when I served Trinity Church in downtown York, Pennsylvania, we began to have in the mid-1970s waves of migration from Central and South America. And they settled in a particular part of town, and the people in my church, which is an old established church founded in 1732 as a German Reformed church, were upset with these newcomers because they would talk in a different language. Why didn't they learn English? The police were often called to that neighborhood because young men were talking, not fighting, but they were like Hispanics do with their hands all the time. And finally, I suggested to the chief of police, it might help you if you would hire an Hispanic officer who could at least speak the language. Well, I mentioned that because what I then said in a sermon in that old historic church in downtown York was, you know, when we Germans first came to Pennsylvania and settled around Baltimore, I read in 1742 in the English newspaper in York, because there was also a German paper, outcries about these new Germans who came in to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. They talked funny, they wouldn't learn English, they were uncouth, they drank too much beer, and they were lazy. And I then said to my congregation, you know, we are a nation of immigrants. All of us came across on the boat, unless we were Native Americans. And then we walked across what's now Alaska down into the United States. An appeal to the past is a way to try to deal, I believe, with the future. This is a good and healthy congregation. You have, in your long history, moved from being a small German ethnic congregation to a large urban church, over 1,000 members on the east side of Baltimore. And now, once again, you are a smaller church. In terms of membership, this is true of almost all city churches in this country. And now is the challenge to discover your distinctive mission, particularly in the greater Canton area, as you move further into this new millennium. You have what I have found to be a very vital outreach to the city, especially in this part of Baltimore. You have an excellent and easy to find location. Now, like most city churches, as I said in the newsletter article I wrote, parking is a problem, particularly if you come to the 8 o'clock service. But that's true of most city churches for the reason I gave you. When these churches were built, there were no automobiles, and people lived in the neighborhood. And I know this is hard for young people to believe. They actually walked to church and to school. That's all changed, of course. You have this beautiful and well-kept and well-loved sanctuary. And for an urban church your size, you have a remarkable number of children and teenagers. You have an excellent music program. I've been impressed every single Sunday. And I have seldom heard a congregation sing as joyfully as you do these hymns of the faith. And I'm certainly impressed by the loyalty and the abilities of so many of you. And you also have excellent lay leaders, not just those who are currently serving, but those who served in the past and are still leaders in the church. But I also believe that United Evangelical Church, as is true of all the city churches I know, is at a critical, even pivotal time in your long history. The visioning process, of which many of you were involved, has provided insights for areas of church life that you will attend to. Using church typology, that's the different types of church based on size, the smallest would be what's called a pastoral-centered church. That is, everything tends to run around the pastor, except the pastor should never make the mistake of thinking she or he runs the church, okay? And then there is the family-sized church, which is a church that deeply cares about each other, as you do here. I've seen this in these 3 months. The next one, and you're right on the verge of this, of what's called a program-sized church. That's a church that really tries to say, this is what God is calling us to do in this neighborhood, in this city. And so the question would be, will the church develop workable strategies to reach the many new people who have moved into the neighborhood around this church? Will this church strengthen this already excellent Christian education program, but for children, for youth, and for younger families? And regardless of how you define church growth, whether it's numerically, spiritually, or both, there is a difference between wanting to grow and deciding to grow. I've never known a church that didn't want to grow. But there are a lot of churches that will not decide. Because when you decide, the church will change. Doesn't mean it's going to be worse or better, it's just going to be different. I once said in a church I serve, you'll know we've grown when you come to church on Sunday and you say, I don't know a lot of these people. And what are they doing here? I said, well, you said we wanted to move and grow. In the past 3 decades, like every family and every church, this congregation has experienced both highs and yes, lows. But an essential strength of this congregation is that whatever challenges come, you come through stronger and I believe more united. Now, your pastor, Kathy, will return from her sabbatical this week on Tuesday. And as you prayed for her each Sunday, I am confident she will come back renewed in spirit, refreshed in energy, perhaps too much energy, and with creative ideas to share. I know you will welcome her back warmly. Finally, friends, these have been 3 good months for me as I come back from where I started from, that is, as a parish pastor. I've been around the church for a very long time. I have seldom, however, enjoyed a ministry more than my time with you. As I said to someone at the coffee hour, that's probably because I knew there was a fixed date in which I was going to be leaving. So you can relax, you see. And I found that since I've retired in serving churches. Rob asked me several Sundays ago if I was going to do this again or be an interim again. And I said, no, I don't think so. This is my final tour. But it's not going to be like, some of you remember Frank Sinatra, he had 3 or 4 final tours. I don't plan to do that. As my father approached his death, after spending 40 years with my mother as missionaries in Nigeria, and then they came back to Texas and spent another 20 years, 30, the president of Nigeria, shortly before my dad died, who was one of Dad's former students, wrote a very brief but very moving letter of thanks. President Obasanjo ended his letter with these words from an old hymn which some of us still remember: "Until we meet again at Jesus' feet." I think of that hymn as I come today to say thanks and goodbye. And my prayer as I take leave of you is that you will accept both the strengths and the challenges of this congregation as you find a new and creative mission opportunity in this new century. You've done it before, you can do it again, and so God be with you on your journey.